everyone. Welcome back to the Earthdawn Survival Guide, a podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, and game masters, and the two enthusiasts hosting it, Josh and myself. I am Dan.
I am Josh.
And on today's podcast, we will be discussing all things arboreal because we're going to talk about the path of the Woodsman and where it came from in first edition, how it got to fourth edition, what paths are a little bit, again, just a quick little overview, and then we'll do a deep dive into how to join and what it's like to be a Woodsman. So if you have any questions for us, please contact us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. But until we get your emails about this episode, what do you have this? So how is the progression from first edition to fourth edition?
So
for this,
Woodsman in first edition was the elf racial discipline.
Yes.
The idea being that it was followed by mainly residents of the Bloodwood. Mm-hmm. That it was a discipline that was created and followed by members of the Elven court as a basically sort of dedicated protector of the forest. Primarily wormwood, but in theory, any kind of elven woodland territory.
Yeah.
The idea also, as part of it, not just Bloodwood, but all of the woodsmen that were, I think, ever really described in first edition were all in Bloodwood. But that there would be woodsmen that were in other parts of Barsave and potentially other parts of the world where there were elves that had some kind of court connections. So Shosara, Seriatha, places like that in theory would also have them.
Yeah.
The woodsman sort of fell into the ranger archetype.
Yeah.
I don't have the original progression right to hand, but I can actually have that here in just a moment.
Fair enough. I meant to say this is going to be all things Cainrethical, but I screwed that up. So.
All right. So the woodsman in first edition only had 8 circles. And it's got kind of a smattering of...
And archery?
Scout and archer and beastmaster. They've got animal training. They've got claw shape, though they don't get claw shape until 5th circle. Mm-hmm. And claw shape seems a little bit weird considering that they don't actually get unarmed combat.
Yeah. They
get melee and missile weapons at 1st circle. They get silent walk, so scout / thief.
Yeah.
They get tracking, they get climbing. They get all the kind of, rangery stuff, okay?
Yeah.
But there's nothing that is in their progression that is anything special or unique. The write-up in first edition says it combines elements of the Beastmaster, Thief, and Warrior disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, missile weapons is sort of iconically more archer, but warriors, of course, also get access to it. And they don't really get any of the other archer talents that would define them as an archer. So really more of scout, beastmaster, warrior kind of thing.
The woodsman's kind of like a Venn diagram of those 3 laid over top.
Yeah. So, and it says that woodsmen begin their careers as sentries for elven cities and communities that lie within the forests and jungles of Barsave. Elves who practice this discipline live only in and around the wooded areas of the land, and so finding a teacher for training can be costly and difficult. Adepts of this discipline will only train other elves. So basically the idea being that these are these sort of stereotypical elf woodsman warriors that protect elven territory.
Your elven
drawing
guard.
inspiration. Yeah, drawing inspiration from the ranger, sort of the elf ranger archetype of D&D. The elves of Lothlorian, I imagine in particular, the ones who capture the fellowship there in the Lord of the Rings series, in the latter half of Fellowship of the Ring. Mm-hmm. That kind of thing, that they are elves who are dedicated to protecting elven lands, and they don't really do anything else. But there's nothing in their kit in first edition that is particularly... oh, this is really, really cool or different. It's just they've got a mix of
stuff,
wildernessy abilities.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's nothing to hugely write home about. It's nothing that you couldn't accomplish already, even under first edition, with, say, a scout or, an archer or a multidiscipline like scout, beastmaster, or something along those lines.
You can figure it out.
But understanding that within the first edition discipline paradigm, the woodsman does get a combination of talents that is not available to any other discipline without multidisciplining. So there is kind of that advantage that the discipline would bring within that development framework. And generally speaking, woodsmen probably would combine with a second discipline that would synergize with the talents that they get, whether they would pick up probably Beastmaster, Archer, or Warrior, possibly Scout. I suspect that Scout isn't mentioned in its write-up because of probably parallel development in the early days of Earthdawn. But anyway, when we shift into 3rd and 4th edition and the talent options design philosophy comes into play, there's a lot more flexibility within the Scout, within the Archer, within even the Warrior to a certain extent, but mainly the Scout and the Archer, to be able to, particularly the Scout, to be able to basically make what was a woodsman without needing an entirely new discipline for it. So when work was being done, and this was done a little bit in parallel with the work that was being done, that was done by Kyle and Carl and Michael on Elven Nations, and how that was a book that was focused on the political dynamics in part between the 3 great elven powers, Bloodwood, Shosara, and Seriatha, leaning into the idea of the woodsman as an elven thing, as a cultural thing, and rather than making it its own discipline, making it a path and therefore giving it access to stuff that only it would have. The one aspect of this that got twisted as well is no longer making it elf only.
Yes.
I mean, basically, it is conceivable that other name givers could follow the woodsman path. They would have to be inducted, but that human woodsmen, which is pretty much the only thing in the text that's kind of mentioned in Elven Nations, are primarily in Shosara because of a reflection of how the elven culture there is blending and combining with the human culture that was there when they sort of first arrived. And dates back to the problems about the separation and how their boats were influenced by human designs, blah, 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 blah. And so within Bloodwood and within Seriatha, which is a much more traditionalist elven society, they are largely just elf exclusive. But in Shosara and perhaps in parts of Barsave, there might be other name givers that have been inducted into the woodsman, perhaps by living alongside a predominantly elven village or something like that. That it is a cultural thing, that it follows a particular philosophy and goal, as opposed to this is the elf special thing. That there's nothing necessarily elfy
about it.
There's nothing uniquely elfy about the woodsman, that it is a cultural path, it is a cultural following, and there's nothing that necessarily prohibits a dwarf who grows up among elves, or a human who grows up among or an orc who grows up among a primarily elven community, and so therefore has a distinctly elven outlook on things, could end up following the philosophy and having the devotion that would allow them to be inducted into this mystical brotherhood.
Yeah.
So that's where that came from. And it was basically going, okay, unlike first edition where this discipline allows a unique collection of talents that isn't available elsewhere, you can kind of put together the talent selection in others. So what can we give them that makes them special and unique?
Yeah.
And that's where the work came from. And so it keeps a lot of the flavor and intention and setting goals, setting purpose that the discipline originally had, and recast them within the framework of the conflict between the Elven Nations and what it means culturally to those people.
All right. That's a nice little 10-minute introduction to the progression of the woodsman from its origin to how it is now as a path to follow, to tie your legend to it, from whatever discipline you are, to add now to this, which is that the woodsman is, in the new essay, based upon Cainrith, the first elf, and that this is to discern and understand all of the flora and the fauna in the forest, down to almost the minute interworkings of nature, dare I say, almost to a cellular level, if I could say that word.
Yeah, there is a very, very strong sense of understanding and oneness with the woodlands that is even above and beyond what a scout, say, would do.
Or even a shaman.
Or a shaman. But scouts, which is one of the disciplines that is sort of most, in some ways, sympathetic to the woodsman path,
yes,
is a lot more flexible in terms of their ability to find cohesion and oneness and their place within any environment. And the woodsman kind of, in a sense,
yes,
cranks up their forest empathy while dialing back in other ways their coherence with other environments.
Yeah.
Or providing that kind of scout-like environmental awareness to other disciplines like archer or warrior or elementalist or something like that don't necessarily have that as part of their core philosophy.
Yeah. So the woodsman is taught how to listen, which in Sperethiel is called RESP, R-E-S-P. And they're using listening as an overall umbrella for the observation, the feeling, and the understanding of everything. So it's not just using your ears, it's using every sense you have to understand what is going on in nature and the exchanges in nature at that time and in your surroundings. So there's a couple of words that I got to learn in reading the essay again today on the terminology in Sperethiel. So the Nordal has two definitions: a group of nobles, A, or a group of woodsmen. It's kind of both. You can intersect that word as often as you'd like. Then there's the Sperethiel word for woodsman, which is retishe, which I think is a beautiful word to use. And then there is the ketrahim, which is the meeting among woodsmen during the solstice or the equinox. Because if you otherwise meet at another time, it's not a ketra. It's something. It's a Nordal. So it's yeah. there's a lot of
elf culture
yes.
that is wrapped up in the woodsman because it has its roots as an elven practice, as an elven cultural thing. And
it's where its foundation lies, yes.
Where its foundations and where its origins lie as a thing.
Yes.
And not only like granting them cool tricks that they now have as a path that are not available elsewhere, but also using that opportunity in the aftermath of the Elven Nations books and to kind of even explore further the question that book kind of raises, which is, what does it mean to be an elf? Who is going to be the inheritor of the elven cultural legacy, given what's happened in the Bloodwood? And the story of the elves in Earthdawn is fascinating.
It is.
In its way. And it is a deep question that, understandably, a lot of players, a lot of game masters, a lot of fans of Earthdawn are interested in exploring and seeing where it leads, because elves, in a sense, have a long attraction within RPG circles, and having the story be what it is, there are still the echoes that you see in a lot of fantasy RPG settings of, the time of elf ascendancy is past and the elves are fading. You sort of have that with regards to what happens, what's going on with the Bloodwood, is that there was a sense that pinnacle of elven achievement, the elven court, the representation of everything that it is to be an elf within the world of Earthdawn, is damaged and broken in a way, and corrupted and fading, and the power of the queen is lessening despite her valiant efforts to maintain an iron grip upon it.
Yep.
And that you have these other elven nations, these other powers, Seriatha and Shosara, who are looking to define what it means to be an elf, whether just for themselves or whether to end up taking the place of the former, of Wormwood within elven culture across the wider empire, and what potential role the elves of Barsave, who are ostensibly still vassals of the elven court, but definitely don't feel that connection so strongly anymore. And just like there's a lot of interesting stuff that's going on there. let alone the potential redemption of the wood and everything else. And just that the Woodsman as an organization, as it was developed here for the paths in 4th edition, continues to play into that theme and notion of what it means to be an elf, and sets out its own definition of what it means to be an elf. Is that in their own way, the Woodsman is saying the Woodsman is the definition of what it means to be an elf. It is the one who listens. It is the one who is at one with our environment, which is to say the woodlands and the forests.
Yes.
And Shosara kind of says on top of that, and that is not necessarily something that requires you to actually be an elf. You just need to be following that philosophy, that notion of that you can be an elf without being an elf kind of thing. There's just a lot of like philosophical. I talked when we were talking about Brothers of Stone, about how a lot of what paths can do is help you focus on a theme or understand what kind of stories maybe your players want to explore, or what kind of game that what kind of long-term arc that you might want to have.
Yeah.
And a Woodsman character is a character that is largely going to be driving and exploring the question, what does it mean to be an elf? Whether that is one that heavily involves the politics of Bloodwood and trying to redeem it or not, that is still a core conceit of this path, because it is something that is so fundamental to its origins and where it was and where it is and where it might be going.
It's going to take some doing, because the Ketras are, as I said, a meeting of many Nordals during this solstice or the equinox. That's 4 times a year. So it's each quarter year. And they have their own purpose for those gatherings. So there's a method to that. And it's kind of like a team meeting you have once a month. And then the Nordals meet 13 times a year during the full moons. So they also meet during the solstices. That's 17 meetings a year, unless you get lucky and have a full moon on a solstice, and then it's only 16. And the missions for anybody who is a Woodsman are assigned during the full moon meeting. So of your 13 meetings a year, that's when you get to go off on your next assignment, per se. And the cool thing is, so we talked about the Brothers of Stone and how each life rock is the same as all the other life rocks. They're all one brotherhood, and so that doesn't really have a priority of, oh, you're from that life rock, you're more important. The Nordals are kind of the same. Each Woodsman, each Protégé, is to assist each other as much as as much as elvishly possible, for the overall benefit of the elven protection and to preserve elven culture, whether that means protecting the area that you're in, protecting the people that you're with, or to preserve the culture, the traditions, or the elvish treasures that are there. So there's also that sense of community as well among the Woodsmen.
So just a quick little bit of trivia. The Woodsman essay,
yes,
pretty sure, was written by the magnificent Russell Zimmerman, Rusty.
Oh, there you go.
Who is well known in Shadowrun circles for being an elf aficionado. Actually, no, Morgan just corrected me. Kyle, this makes sense.
Yes.
Kyle was actually the one that wrote
Woodsman essay.
The Woodsman, which makes sense because he was the one that had
done Elven Nations.
Yeah, because he had done Elven Nations.
So this is a nice little precursor.
Rusty wrote Windmaster.
Gotcha.
In the Paths book. I don't remember what, I think he wrote 2, but I don't remember what the other one might have been. I thought it was Woodsman because of his elf thing, but no, that was Kyle because of the Elven Nations thing, which is why it ties in so strongly.
Yeah. Well done,
book.
Kyle, and I'm certainly sure well done, Rusty, as well, because elvish proclivities. And that's my $10 word for the day, proclivities. So to join, let's get to the meat of the episode here. To join the Woodsman ranks, as Josh pointed out, it is not elf exclusive. The knack that you get for Woodsman is not limited to elves, but you do have to know Sperethiel at a certain rank. You have to be able to read and write Sperethiel and so forth. And this really does, as Josh pointed out, lend itself to archers, elementalists, scouts, and warriors. So bringing a little bit of first edition into this edition here. Can they worship passions? Not necessarily frowned upon, but they really do prefer, Astandar and Jaspri. Those are, they're there. Not entirely frowned upon, but, there might be some conflict of a passion versus a woodsman. There it is, because passions don't really limit name givers, but the Woodsmen kind of are focused on elf. There's that. And you can have other paths along with this. You can be a scholar and a woodsman. You can be a purifier and a woodsman, but they really are not going to let you into the woodsman ranks if you're already a horror stalker.
Yeah.
On that path.
It is very, very difficult in general, to follow multiple paths to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the oath that is involved, because of the thread magic, the pattern magic that is involved, because of the dedication and requirements that are often involved in following a path, it is very, very difficult to follow in a similar way that it should be difficult to follow multiple disciplines. It is very difficult to follow multiple paths. There are, obviously cases, especially with elves being as long-lived as they are, they certainly would have the time to perhaps devote to following multiple paths. But it's something that would be, I imagine, very, very rare and very unlikely.
I agree. So the initiation is pretty much a current woodsman finds out if you want to be involved or you approach them. However the conversation happens, they listen to you. They do the resp to you. And we don't just mean they listen to the words you're saying. They actually listen to your dedication for the people around you in your life, the desire to connect or understand the forest, and the passion, not tongue-in-cheek, that you have for that sense of community and that sense of purpose. So it takes 3 rank 5 members or more to do your interview, per se, and assign you an ordeal to get you to join. And if you pass, then they discuss the lessons you learned from that afterward. So it's not just, hey, you did it, great, slap on the back, have a beer. No, this is a lifelong learning process about what you should have understood in the ordeal that you went through to either preserve, protect, defend Elven culture, or promote Elven culture, or you reacquired an item and why that was important in the history of Elven culture, or what you did for the wood itself, not necessarily the bloodwood, but the woods that you're nearby or in, or whatever you were assigned to. So that's that. Many ordeals and advancements can happen, but let's, as I said, get to the meat of the thing. There's new aspects of the karma ritual you would get to learn and incorporate into your karma ritual for whatever discipline you're following. And these would probably incorporate something along with the forest or protection or Elven culture in some way. And, perhaps your karma ritual is involving speaking. Well, maybe now you need to change that into Sporethiel, since you've had to learn Sporethiel, and just incorporate more elfishness into your current karma ritual.
Yes.
And you get a half magic ability, which is to, of course, just like the Brothers of Stone, find other woodsmen, know the history of woodsmen naturally, but your perception-based half magic abilities is to detect the presence of wood elemental spirits within 30 yards, and that's always active, just like Brothers of Stone could do for theirs.
Earth elementals, yeah.
Yeah, earth elementals. So your woodsman talent cost is a master tier talent cost, and maximum rank of 10, I believe, is the same as the Brothers of Stone.
Yes.
This is all very cool. The first rank doesn't get you a whole lot other than a talent. Second rank gets you, of course, every single rank you get gets you a talent. But rank 2 gets you a +1 physical defense and a talent. Rank 3, just a talent. Rank 4, mystic defense bonus, talent. Rank 5, nothing. But rank 6, 8, 9, and 10 are physical defense, initiative, mystic defense, and a recovery test. So, and again, what Josh said last time, these actually stack with the other bonuses you're getting from your discipline itself. So these are nothing to sneeze at for when you go down the list. So shall we jump into the talent options?
Yeah.
Or did I miss anything?
You covered it all very well.
I'm trying to be prepared. So show prep pays off. So at rank 1, 2, 3, or 4, you can have one of these talents per rank in Woodsman Knack. Anticipate blow, awareness, climbing, danger sense, great leap, stealthy stride, tracking, wilderness survival, or woodskin, or the new one, guardian's service.
Yeah, those selections are pretty clearly if you are not already a scout or an archer kind of taking options that are scouty in nature, it allows any discipline to pick up some additional abilities that will make them more effective as a scout type or wilderness survival sort within the forest environment. For a scout or scout aligned archer, they can pick up even more options, because you only got so many options. You can pick up even more to flesh out your abilities.
Yeah.
Guardian's service actually plays into one of the themes of the Woodsman as working together. There is kind of a little bit of a teamwork theme that goes along with the Woodsman, the idea that they work in groups, that they are also devoted to the protection of their fellows and the people within the area that they protect. Guardian's service allows the user to take penalties to their defense ratings to provide a bonus to an adjacent ally of an equal amount. So
That's
you
cool.
could lower your own physical defense to provide a bonus to the physical defense of
Your
someone
ally.
next to you.
Yeah.
Yep.
But none of those there's a purchase at a journeyman tier. None of those first set of talent options are really offensive in combat. These are all kind of passive or secondary.
Right. A lot of what they are is to provide the ability for someone who might not already be proficient in operating in a wilderness environment to make it easier for them to operate within that environment.
Yeah. I mean, stealthy stride tracking, wood skin, we're good. So rank 5 and up, you get a few more options. And of course, this is 5, 6, 7, and 8. Mystic Pursuit, also passive. Evidence Analysis, quite passive. Life Sight, Safe Path, and 2 new ones. Wood Speak and Wood Walk.
Those are relatively self-explanatory. Wood Speak is similar to Earth Speak that the Brother of Stone gets that we talked about last time.
Yes.
Wood Speak allows the character to communicate with nearby wood elementals. And so allows them to speak to wood spirits in the area. And it can basically substitute for elemental tongues if it comes to summoning or dealing with elemental spirits.
Yeah.
But only with wood spirits. You can't use it to communicate, obviously, with elementals of other types. And then Wood Walk, the character can touch a tree and disappear into the tree and reappear out of another tree within the range of the ability.
That's just cool.
Again, start giving the woodsman abilities that make sense within their purpose and what they're supposed to do, but that are only available to them.
Yeah.
Or that are strongly related to abilities that are fairly limited in access otherwise.
All very cool. And so rank 9 and 10, because it stops at 10, you get 2 of these next 4 options. These are, of course, purchased at master tier. Chameleon, which I don't think we've talked about before.
That is a high circle talent that is a stealth talent. Forget exactly what it does, but it either, I think it provides bonuses to stealthy stride, I think is what it mechanically does.
Fair.
It basically provides additional bonuses to stealth stuff.
Well, yeah, chameleon. Just can't do plaid. Sorry. Tick joke. Plant talk, which I think is also quite obvious on its own. Vine armor, which also sounds quite obvious, but those ought to provide some nice bonuses there. And then forest sense.
Yeah, forest sense is the new one in this book. The woodsman needs to spend at least a week in a forest or similar area. It allows them to extend their senses over up to their rank in miles around them.
Wow.
Once they've bonded, they can concentrate on a particular area and use forest sense as a perception test to sense what is going on at that location, as long as it is within range.
Yeah.
They can search for something specific in the course of that. Oh, I want to see if this person is within the area that I can sense. It just takes time for them to perform that search, but they can essentially cover that entire area. It takes an hour, and then additional successes on the test basically reduce the amount of time that it takes. But it basically, extends the woodsman's perceptive ability to impressive distances. As long as the area that they are checking is within the bonded wood that they are connected with.
Exactly. The last little bit of terminology I want to throw out there is, for the last year or so, we've all been wearing a nordaltre, which is a mask over the nose and mouth. Usually bearing a noble insignia in Earth Dawn for the elves, but it's a nordaltre, is I think how that's pronounced in Sperethiel. But so we covered some knacks, or was the idea of some knacks, really cool knacks for the Brothers of Stone. Josh, do you have some insight into some knacks for the Woodsman?
The Woodsman, like all of the paths, gets access to several karma knacks, which are basically knacks that allow them to spend karma on special things based on their rank as a woodsman. One of the things that I kind of find cool about some of them, several of the woodsman karma knacks are Sperethiel, like their name is Sperethiel. Like, for example, at rank 3, they get Resp Kefeliat.
Ooh, nice.
Which allows them to, which it translates, I think, to like listener of something. I forget exactly. They might be described in the essay. I don't have the translations right in front of me. But that one, they get access to it potentially at rank 3. It allows them to spend karma points on tests to conceal their presence within a forest. So there are a few knacks that have Sperethiel names.
Kefeliat is of the moon. So listen to the moon.
Yeah. So they're probably named after the different things that are listed there.
Yeah.
Let's see. At rank 1, they can spend karma on climbing, plant talk, or wilderness survival tests. That's with the knack Woodsman's Home.
Nice.
Rank 2, they can spend karma on mystic pursuit or tracking. Rank 3, I just mentioned. Rank 4 is the knack Retichet, which allows the adept to spend a karma point on tests to detect and find things within a forest.
Mm-hmm.
Rank 5, Resp Kelavota, which allows them to spend karma on woodskin.
Yeah, that's the...
And this would be, as a karma ability, would be in addition to the karma that they might normally be able to spend on it, if it's as a talent.
Yeah.
So this basically allows them to double up on karma.
Yeah, Rest Kelavota is listen to the rest, as in resting.
At rank 6, Resp Kevardan allows them to spend karma on a recovery test while within a forest.
Mm-hmm.
Rank 7 gives wood elemental affinity. They can spend karma on elemental tongues, summon, and wood talk tests against wood elementals, but it prevents the adept from using a contest of wills against those because obviously they should have a good relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Rank 8 is Nordal Defender, which allows them to spend a karma point on an adjacent ally's active defense, aka avoid blow, steal thought, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Rank 9 is Resp Ketiel. The adept can spend a karma point on any action test in a forest that they have been in for at least a week. It does also require them to have forest sense talent at rank 5.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all of the karma talents that are available. Then let's see, are there any? Well, there's a couple of forest sense knacks, which are at rank 10. There's a knack called the Forest is My Sense. Their ability to sense the forest around them is second nature, and they can instinctively rely on it as an extension of their natural senses. They can make the test in place of an awareness, a similar test, even if they have not been in that forest before. Then they get a couple of special maneuvers at high ranks in that. The Forest's Grasp, for 2 strain, they can spend 2 successes on a close combat or ranged attack test to cause foliage, trees, and nearby plants to restrain the target.
Mm-hmm.
Or Foliage Harassment, for 2 successes, they can cause them to entangle the target. So one of them basically prevents the target from moving. The other one actually imposes harried penalties.
Ooh.
If the ability already imposes harried that it's used on, it increases the penalty.
Yeah.
Either both of those can only be used in forests. Let's see, there is no guardian. So yeah, so there are some knacks that, like, again, you get all those karma knacks. There are some knacks available for their special, Woodwalk has some talents.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Woodwalk has several talent knacks that are available to it.
Nice.
Which I won't go through all of those, but those are all listed in the Mystic Paths book, and most of them are sort of at higher circle.
Yeah.
One of them at rank 5, for example, there's a knack that basically their movement rate cannot be reduced by difficult terrain while in a forest.
Nice. All useful. All useful. I don't care what campaign you're in. It's all useful stuff. All those knacks are...
So there's a lot of like cool special abilities that get gated, that are sort of gated behind these unique talents that they get, which allow even more sort of flexibility when it comes to what they are able to do.
Yeah. I always wanted to play a Woodsman in first edition. I just never got around to making the character and so forth. But I think this is a path I would look into a little bit more. I'm not the world's biggest fan of elves as far as playing them is concerned. I love to scrang Obsidian are my, those are my 1-2. But I've always thought the Woodsman was a nice way to flesh out a character I have somewhere in the back of my mind. So, just me. Any further thoughts on the Woodsman before we wrap this one up?
No, I think we covered that pretty well. Again, this continues the theme, if we can call it that at this point.
Fair.
Of having a path that is intended to explore certain themes or questions when it comes to a character. The Brother of Stone kind of relating to what does it mean to be an Obsidian Man. Mm-hmm. The Woodsman especially interacts with the question of what it means to be an elf in bar save, but sort of, within that framework that we talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. So it's all really, really interesting and cool.
Yeah, I
like what was done with it and the unique abilities and how it pays homage to its origins in first edition while exploring some new territory and providing some more fun toys for people to play with.
Yeah, I like the compare and contrast between the Brother of Stone, kind of an echo warrior for life rocks in the earth, and the Woodsman is kind of a echo warrior for trees in the forest. So just one of those, protect the land, protect the trees, protect the environment around you. So that's why I did both of these back to back. So until next time, folks, if you have any questions for us, you know how to reach us. It's edsgpodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, it is time for you to go listen to your legend.
Have a good night.